Hello, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere, where we've got another fabulous guest on my show today. His name is Robert Laterman. Robert is a retired park ranger who lives in California North Coast. His unique experience and vivid imagination has inspired him to share the richness of the North Coast environment in the educational but entertaining way. He enjoys being with his family, spending outdoors, researching, filming, teaching, writing, and investigating Bigfoot related subjects matter. Can we please welcome Robert to the show? Hello there.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank you very much for being with us today. Was you interested in Bigfoot at an early age then?
Yeah, not too early. I'd say about the big time I started taking it seriously. It's probably about college age, but I still remember being at the seeing this movie called Legend of Bogey Creek. It says Swamps of the South, and being in a drive-in movie theater because my dad was into that kind of thing. Families in the van or at the movie theater, and if I don't, some people don't even know what a drive-in movie theater is, but the cars parked. You have to walk in to go to the bathroom down the road there. And I remember having to go just after the scene where the guy's sitting on the toilet and the big hand swipes through the window, when he's taking care of business. Then I had to go pee. So I had to walk all the way down to the concession bathroom. And that was kind of the first big push for that. But it was still after college or during college, I was doing a lot of typical research on it. And I was looking up a bunch of stuff and finding out more about it and keeping little notes because, you write down notes on like little index cards and they'll come in handy someday. So I spent a lot of time doing that instead of studying for college. Yeah, I barely made it through college. I think I spent more time writing notes on index cards, doing research than actually paying attention to other subject matter. But that's just kind of the start. I'd say the big push that got me pretty much into it would probably be about, I don't know, I'll say 1999. And I was, as a park ranger, one of the units I was working at a place called Humboldt Redwood State Park. It's one of the redwood parks, third largest in California, the coastal redwoods. So I was like doing my job, and then a gentleman showed up, and he wanted to talk to a ranger, and it was John Freitas. He was one of the pioneers for call blasting, which is basically pumping alleged Bigfoot calls through big old heavy duty speakers on the back of a pickup truck. That was his big deal. And so he showed up and very professional, and he mentioned, former law enforcement, and he was like, they're out with a group investigating this encounter that took place at the Humboldt Redwood Park like a month before in August. So he told me about it, and then I tried to encourage him to go somewhere else because in the park systems, there's certain times a year because of marble murrelets or spotted owls that nesting periods are closed to loud music and noises and stuff. So I had to send him somewhere else because his group shows up on Labor Day weekend. It's one of the 3 busiest times of the year in the parks. So it's like, no, you can't be making the noise, but you can do it over here somewhere else. But anyhow, so it wasn't a month later until I had investigated it based on photographs on the BFRO website. And they had this little article that they wrote up of their investigation. And so based on the photograph of this stump and some trees, and I decided to go out and find the location. This is a month later. So that was in August. I want to say August 23rd. So now it's just after Labor Day weekend. It's like September 20th, 23rd. So I go out with one of my park aides, and she's a pretty good tracker. She took classes from the I want to say John Brown School of Tracking, but it's Tom Brown School of Tracking. And so she had some skill sets. So I brought her along, and we pulled up that photograph, and then let's go find this place. So the location was on the river trail, which is right across the creek near the Burlington campground. So we're walking along with this photograph from the BFRO website, trying to match the looking up the hillside to see what it could be. And sure enough, there's this one spot that fits the topography. It's like open area, but yet just old squirrel trees. There's some stumps that have been burned. They go, this is it. So we decided to investigate it. And sure enough, it was. So I got up to the top, and I'm looking around, and I find a cigarette butt and find like a camera strap laying on the ground. And lo and behold, here's the stump. It's an old redwood stump, good size, that's been burnt over, but it also had this moss growing on it. And I noticed that when you scratch on it, all the black comes off with the moss. And so I'm looking for scratch marks because the way the story was reported, dad and son were walking along the trail, and son's shoe came untied. So son had to stop to tie the shoe up. And dad's waiting, kind of looking around. And he looks up the hillside and he sees what he described as a half naked, chest up, waist up individual, hairy, walking back and forth on this hillside between these trees, and then stops and scratches his back on a stump. So what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for a stump that has scratch marks on it, and obviously this one didn't. So I scratch on it. You can take everything off. There's no indication of that, but yet there's cigarette butt, and then there's a camera strap, which meant they were there investigating, and there's a photo that matches. And then I kind of look over, and then just off to the left, this is about about mid-September, almost 3/4 of the way through September, and the redwood trees start dropping their duff. They're not deciduous trees. It's just that the leaves fall off every 7 years. So, and they usually fall off, a lot of them around fall. So these are falling off, and all the game trails are covered with needles. So you can't see any tracks. You just know that this is a game trail. So I'm following along. It goes down, it goes over there. And then lo and behold, there's like these 3 redwood trees about 1 foot in diameter. And one of them in the middle has some scratch marks on them, where the redwood duff, which is small on the smaller trees, which is really soft, it's pressed down about 1 foot off the ground, and it goes up about 6 feet. I go, that's interesting. So I go over there, and it's like a little spur trail goes around the stump, goes right over to that groves of trees. And then I'm like, hey, this could be it. So I could sit and squat, put my back against it, and rub my back on this tree. And of course, that's what I did. Not thinking about maybe we should get out a magnifying glass and look for hair fibers. It's like, yeah, this is the place. So it was clear to me that whatever it was had rubbed it against this tree. And you could see where the spur come back around and then went to the side of the hill and just drops off over some brush. So that was the main game trail. So of course, what does Robert do? Well, it's part of our job was to do investigations and write things up. I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to write up my investigation, not publish it in the system with the parks for a crime report or incident report, because I don't think it would go well at the time writing an incident report of a Bigfoot encounter and putting it into the bureaucratic system of the Park Service. So I just said, I'll just send a copy of my little investigation over to the BFRO to a guy named Matt Moneymaker. So I'll write that up. So there were 4 pictures that were taken, and I was posing for most of those because the person I was with didn't want her photograph taken. So she took a picture of me wearing my Stetson, standing in front of the tree. That's when I got in trouble. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the other ones too, where I'm pointing at where the fold down of the bark is, the fibrous bark. And so those were well. So we have 4 pictures we included, the write-up of the investigation, the talking about it, and they send it to the BFRO just to let them know they have the wrong stump, that they missed it. It was this tree off to the side. So of course that led to me being offered BFRO curatorship. And so I got the feedback from Matt. He goes, hey, I would like to be a curator for the BFRO. And I go, well, what's a curator? I go, well, you're the guy who will talk to people, interview them, get information, help others doing their investigations. Like, okay, I guess that'll be fun. So that was my initial involvement of that. They got me started. But remember those photographs they just talked about? Well, what happened was the BFRO published in their website the article that I wrote. Of course, you think that would be it, right? No. Somebody farther up the state saw that on the website, complained that they don't want their tax money being paid for rangers looking for Bigfoot. And so that got to another supervisor who contacted my supervisor at the time and sent me a cease and desist order saying you will no longer be investigating Bigfoot stuff while you're working. Well, what I didn't tell you about is 2 years prior to this whole incident, I was giving interpretive programs on Bigfoot, which means people show up for interpretation, the animals and plants, what's in the park. One of my responsibilities was to provide that service, interpretation. So I had a campfire program where I would have a bunch of handhelds like tabloid magazines and other things. We show slide presentations and we answer questions. And we had a lot of people after programs coming up to me, telling me their stories or asking me more in-depth questions about it. Well, I was doing this 2 years before that. So now the cease and desist letter says I can't even use state time to do my research. And I did that for the presentations I was providing. So one of the guys I work with, at first I thought he was trying to get me in trouble, but later on I realized maybe he was helping, was he took a copy of that article in the BFRO and put it on my supervisor's desk. So now all the evidence, when I walked into the office to talk with him, sitting on the desk is this copy of the whole article I wrote. I'm like, oh, this is going to go over good. And so we sat down and his only complaint was, who took the picture and why was I, wearing my Stetson? Well, we're supposed to wear Stetsons when we have our photographs taken. It's part of our uniform. So I said, well, I was in my uniform, and nothing in the letter or the article I wrote was incriminating to the department. It was just stating facts in the investigations. So I know there was no problem with that. So only thing he found was I was wearing my uniform for the article. So they lifted the cease and desist letter and things were back to normal. But it's kind of ironic when you get the cease and desist letter and they tell you don't do any more stuff. And then 9 months later, there's this reality, I'll call it reality TV for lack of better words. I think it was called Real Scary Stories. And what they were doing is they were interviewing people and they had these kids looking for things. And one of them was Bigfoot. So of course I get the invite, right? 9 months after I'm told not to do any of this, we get this invite from Real Scary Stories, just talking to the park, wanting to get a ranger to go up to Crescent City, which is almost 2 hours away, to be interviewed about Bigfoot. So of course I get the gig. So I get to go on state time in uniform with my Stetson. And of course, I wash my car. It's nice and pretty. It's a nice white pickup truck. It's got a little star on the door. Back then, I don't think we had stars. We had just the emblems on them, but it was nice and pretty and white. It was clean. So imagine I get to Crescent City and I'm just about to be interviewed, right? So I got my nice white car. I'm in the driver's seat, windows rolled down. I got my Stetson on, looking real pretty. And just behind me, the sun is setting, right? You get those in the fall, you get kind of the golden colors on sunset because usually a lot of burning goes on. So you get the nice orange skies. It's reflecting off the white car. It's beautiful. And then they start asking me questions. Well, I can only answer questions off a list that I was told I was allowed to answer questions off of. This is kind of the micromanaging process of this. But do you think that the interviewers ask any questions off that list? And no, they didn't. No. So I couldn't answer anyone, right? Get in trouble, right? No, I can't answer that. Can't answer this. And I finally had to ask, well, did you guys get a list? They go, no. Oh, well, I have a copy. You can answer these following questions. And of course, I made the cutting room floor, and the other gentleman that made the presentation was a guy who had shaved his head. He had a cast that he had poured and had hair fiber stuck to it. So imagine, if you will, chrome dome, has this beautiful white cast. The sun is setting, the white's reflecting, the orange is reflecting off his white cast.
Yeah.
And you got this beautiful, beautiful, scene. It would have been mine, but not anymore. So it's the same thing. So that's kind of the big push that got me involved in the process. It was mostly interviewing people who had sightings or encounters and then helping other people per region and entering the data into a database that other people can go to find out about what happened, like articles, like sighting places. Yeah. So I did that for a while, and then I kind of got tired of doing that because, when you investigate something and you interview people and you write down what they say and you present it with the evidence and you try not to be pointed, you try not to say they're full of this, you try to be as professional as you can and share their experience. And then in the comments section, you can back it up, or you can say, well, I didn't notice any of that and this. So I try to be as nice as you can, because can you imagine people go to you with these stories, and to get them to tell you a story, sometimes you have to coerce it out of them. And then you want to publish it. And they're like, oh, I don't even know about this. And so why would you hang those people out to dry and make them look silly? So you try to be as professional as you can. So anyhow, some of the articles I was writing was getting changed a little bit about it, and I finally decided that it's not as fun as it used to be. So I got involved with something different. So I'm talking about 1999 of October, November is when I got on with the BFRO. So about early 2000, I started getting tired of doing those kind of follow-ups. So about 2003 to 2004-ish, we started doing the BFRO expeditions, like held off for the public. Like the Skookum Cast was, I want to say 2000-ish or 2001. I get those mixed up. But that was a kind of not the public one, but that's where they found, in the Skookum Cast, that's where they found alleged laydown of a Bigfoot in a mud wallow where it was laying down trying to get the apples to eat it and stuff.
Right.
That's so kind of controversial, but you can find that. It's the Skookum Cast out of Skookum Meadow. It's a 200-pound plaster Paris cast with people donating their ski poles. I mean, their tent posts, just so they can have a foundation structure for it. Can you imagine carrying around a 200-pound plaster Paris cast? But they poured that in Skookum in that area. Well, in 2003, I got involved with the public expeditions. So now this was a lot more fun to organize the expedition. So I got one of the earlier ones. I think it was in May, I want to say 2004, if my memory serves me right. But I was leading the first organized BFRO expedition for the public in California. I think it was the first one was in the Redwood country. So I got a chance to get some guests down. Like I had guest speaker, I had the Sierra Sound guys, Barry, and please forgive me if when you get to be 63, you kind of run out of names sometimes. You got to go down that list. And Al Barry, and I got to think now, and the famous guy, gone. But yeah, Mr. Sierra Sounds. It'll come back to me.
I will do. Moneymaker.
What was that?
Bobo. Was it Bobo?
I didn't hear that. Anyhow,
Bobo. Moneymaker.
Yeah. So where was I on that now? I got to go back to where I was. Okay, so we got the expedition stuff going, and invited two speakers to come down, and that's when I first got to hear the Sierra Sounds. Ron Moorhead, thank you. Better late than never, but Ron Moorhead, he was one of the Sierra Sound guys. So I finally got to hear these guys. I got to meet these guys, and I'd organized all the guest speakers. Kathy Moskowitz was down there for that. Kathy, I'll call her Strain. Kathy Strain. She was one of my guest speakers. She did evidence collection, and then I had Ron Moorhead and Al. They were talking to people, and I was selling their CDs, and they had these sounds they were talking about. And it's the first time I heard the samurai talk. Yeah. And so I was thinking, oh, this is kind of weird. Like I think I can make those sounds. I can do all that stuff. So that was my first impressions of that. And I was thinking, well, they're interesting, but it didn't mean that much to me at the point. So I'm going to fast forward 9 more months, and I'm with Bart Coutinho, and we're on the side of, no, I take it back. I was with Bobo Fay and myself and Mel out of Washington. And we're sitting on the hillside there after we did the Shelby Car Club. We did an expedition for the Shelby Car Club, and had a great time. A lot of weird stuff went on. But there was this one area there where we had walked in with the night vision. I think at the time it was my first exposure to Gen 3s, but we were using like Gen 1.5s, which were very good. Anyhow, so we had Bobo's group pass us up. This was like on a Friday. They passed us up. They went in there, and we were having trouble walking. We couldn't see. And so I know I digressed a little, but it'll all make sense in a second. So they walked in before us. And this is in the area where I was talking about we were hearing the samurai talk. This is a few days before. So the group goes walking in, and then we hear them on the radio. It sounds like they're being overrun, and they're talking over each other, and they're all excited. And they told us that they heard Bigfoots on all around them, making noises, going back and forth, chatter, and all sorts of weird stuff. And of course, they were excited. So we got to go back afterwards, and all we heard were owls. So of course, we're kind of skeptical about that. So I go, oh, you probably heard owls. Maybe they heard these barred owls that sound like monkeys or something. So we go in there, we hear owls, we sit for hours, we come back out kind of almost disappointed, right? Why did the other group that would before us get all the fun stuff, and why did we come back out and get nothing? And so we said, oh, we'll just come back the next day. So we came back the next day up in that area there. And then we started finding some, we found foot impressions in the mud down in the swampy area. And one of them was really small, and it's almost like a small little foot. And then on the other side of the swampy area, we found 2 larger sizes. So this is like the next day. So we're going, that's unusual. We're not getting too excited about it. So after that, we finished with the expedition, sent everybody home. And the last day, Sunday, we usually spend to ourselves. We send our clients away, and now we kick back and try to enjoy it. Because when you have clients and you're working with them, your whole time is spent, educating, directing, and you really don't have any free time to sit there and do nothing. So now that we sent our clients away, we have plenty of time. So we're sitting there. I was with Bobo, and we're back. Pretty good sized guy. So it's more like my back is to his butt, he's a lot taller. So we're sitting there on this hillside. It's real quiet. And about an hour and a half to 2 hours before that, we decided to cook bacon. That was Bobo's special secret. We cook bacon, and then we eat as much bacon as we can, and we cook some more. And when you're on the hillside in the evening time, the inversion kicks in, and the smells start going downhill a little bit. And so you start getting those nice little smells. You're flooding the swamp area, the same swamp area that we had those foot impressions I mentioned. So you're like, oh, that's pretty interesting. So we flood that area there, and we're sitting there, and now we're half asleep, sitting there back to back. We already ate the bacon, and we're just like kicking back. And then you hear this thing that you're kind of wondering what in the world's going on. You hear like, what about? And you're like, what? So you think, were those the monkeys? Was those the same thing that the group heard a couple days before? Well, of course, I had the expert sitting right behind me, really close. And I look at him and I mouth the words like, what's that? And the words you want to hear back is, oh, those are these things, Robert. You get, I don't know. You're like, what? How do you not know? So all of a sudden, it reminded me of the samurai talk that I heard. And you go back again to those sounds, the Sierra sounds that I was making fun of 9 months earlier. I'm now hearing myself on the side of a hill in the middle of nowhere where nobody else is at except us, coming from down below us where we can't see anybody down there. We didn't have any, at the time, we didn't have any thermal equipment, no such thing for us. The night vision we had, the really good one, Mel had, and he was up farther up the hill, so couldn't help us with that one. So all we saw was darkness, and we're hearing these sounds that sound like samurai talk. So that really changed my outlook on it. But that was just with the progression I went through, finding an interest in doing more of expeditions, getting more people, taking them out, showing them a good time, educating them on them, and trying to let them know that every sound you hear is not a Bigfoot. But talking about tracking and trying to make their experience out in the forest a better one, more educated one. But so I did that for quite a while with the BFRO. I think I started counting. I think I went on 26 expeditions over a time period. That's a lot.
Oh my God.
Well, that's a lot of time away from your wife and your kids and your responsibilities at home. I'm still married, by the way. So got to knock on some wood. She understands, we do have to have our little adventures to keep us sane. But after I got involved with the BFR expeditions, I started getting involved with videography. So here's the first mistake you make is you say, here, Robert, here's a camera. Here's one that sees in the dark. So guess what I did starting in 2009? Well, when we were going through the expeditions, we started videotaping, not our reactions, but we would have them on, and we'd be trying to record evidence as we travel around.
Right.
To a point of keeping it on in front of you or putting it on your head, or having it running behind you while you're walking down the trail. I thought it'd be more fun to film people experiencing the phenomena. So in 2009, I got a hold of a camera and I started filming people, and I drove people nuts. So like camera in your face, like a paparazzi, like filming. Say that again.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I see. That's how I roll, though. I overdo it. Not until I find my equilibrium. So I just thought it was so great to sit there and film nature and people experiencing the nature part of it. And then I didn't even think about editing. My job was just to capture the footage and then hand it off. But what's happening is when I would do that, all the equipment that we had would go with each expedition. So everything I had recorded gets deleted for the next expedition. So I talked to Matt about that, and he goes, well, why don't you edit it yourself? So what a concept, right? So 2010, I go, I should try that. And then again, here comes the monster, right? So guess what Leiterman started doing? He started flooding the BFRL YouTube channel with over hundreds of interviews, investigations, little things that we did. And I was just pumping them up, putting them on there. And about 2010, I was looking for more stuff to do. So that's when I remember the conversation I had with Stephen Stroyford. And Stephen Stroyford used to be the Bigfoot Books in Willow Creek till it burned down.
Right.
But he was my earlier contact. I ran into him in, I'll say 2007. And it was the 40th anniversary of the Patterson film. And at the time, I didn't really care much about the Patterson film. It was just an opportunity to meet other Bigfooters. So in 2007, right, I was attending this. I was helping out with it. And then I got to meet Stephen Stroyford, who told me the story about the film site being misplaced or lost or people confused about it, which it didn't really connect with me very much. I just said, oh, yeah, well, welcome to the club. A lot of people don't know where things are. And so I started filming. So I finally decided I should do it. So I show up again. And so Stephen, I should mention this, that Stephen and I stayed up for quite a long time at night around the fire in 2007, talking about all sorts of things. And I enjoyed my conversations with him. I thought that'd be kind of a great thing to do someday. And here comes someday is 2010. So from 2007 to 2010, I still did the BFR expeditions, still did a lot of interviews, stayed pretty busy. And about 2010, it was time to go see Stephen and learn about this missing film site thing. I had been to an area that people told me was the film site, but I didn't realize that there were an area where a lot of people tell people they're film sites, but they're not the right one. It's just whatever you hear and you hang out there and you're like, hey, we're here, man. It's somewhere here within 6 miles, you're good. So it's like, okay, I got to get into this. So I started filming Stephen. And at that point, when I started filming him, before I started filming him, I should say, is I had no concern about finding the right film site. It didn't even ring a bell with me. And so, but this is my interview. So I have to cover this though. When I arrived at Bigfoot Books, parked outside, and I was talking on the video camera, and outside of the Bigfoot Books, you can hear this music, but it's boom, 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 coming out of the open door, right? And so I'm making comments about it, and I show up there, and I got my camera. I'm talking on the camera, going, "Here we are. All right, here we are. Look, oh, there's the door." So I'm walking in, and I get into the place. I'd never been there before, but there were bookcases everywhere, and these bookcases were so full that you had to see stacks of books next to the bookcases, like you're walking through this tunnel of books. I'm like, oh my, there's the books everywhere. So finally, I see this head pop up at the far end, and it's Stephen. And I got the camera rolling. I go, there he is. So I walk in, but I don't think he was too happy I was filming, when I showed up there. He pops up, and we had a little talk about, it's not very polite to put cameras in people's faces. But I said, you asked me to do this. We're here. We're filming. So we got over that. And next thing I know is I'm sitting there recording Stephen's blog that he had. And he's going down like a PowerPoint. And I did not realize how intricate the film site process was. How the concepts of where it was, the arguments, the locations, all the fundamental things, like how do you get all this done in this small window of time? How do you do this to do that? So this was all relatively new to me. So I was filming, and so I filmed his thing, and then I went to the film site. well, the area of the film site. And then I hiked up the creek. I went all over to the places I was familiar with because I'd been there in 2007. As a matter of fact, Cliff and Bobo had showed me some large trees against the hillside, but we had to climb through brush to get there. So I remember people talking about it, but I don't remember exactly where that was. And I remember being told by Cliff and Bobo, we think these are the places. We think these are the trees. And our job was to prove it. So here we are now, 2010. Robert's up there now. He's got his camera. He's running everywhere, filming everything. And now it started making sense to me. I started realizing that, how can you tell? It's overgrown. Where is this place? I've been here before. What? That's not it? Where's the other place? So then that became the mission. And the mission was, let's do it. So I'm going to film Ian Carton and Steven Streufert as they investigate a location, 5 locations, like that, 5 locations along this section of gravel bar river, overgrown forest that is alleged film site's going to be at. So I guess about 2 days into that, I started asking a lot of questions. Instead of just being that get fly on the wall who just records, I started asking questions. Next thing you know, they gave me this little red pill and I kind of took it. And now I'm number 3 of the team now. So now I'm the 3rd investigator for the Bluff Creek film site project. At the time, the name I come up with was Bluff Creek Film Site Project because that's what we're working on. But over time, it got changed to the Bluff Creek Project. And so that's kind of how we started with all that stuff there. And so I started asking questions. Now I'm concerned about it. So now I go up there a lot and I start taking those 5 alleged film site locations. Whenever chance I get up there, I'm grid searching them. I'm exploring them. When I'm with Steven and Ian, we're doing the same thing. So we narrow it down on the first year, 2010, we narrow it down to like 1 or 2 places. The original one that I spent a lot of time at casting bear tracks over the years was, to my knowledge, now I know that was called the MK Davis location. That's downstream where it widens up. That area there has a lot of erosion issue and terraces. So I went there and I went with Rip Lytle. And he ran his GPS unit. I ran the camera. We interviewed each other. We gridded that place up and down, back and forth. When we looked at the GPS record, it was like a tic-tac-toe board. And it was lacking all the things that was necessary. There were stumps, but they weren't where they're supposed to be. They were on a slope. They're supposed to be on a flat flood terrace. The trees that I call them the 4 amigos on the far left, there were 4 trees, but they were too big to fit in with the scale of the thing. And the tops were broken off because they were dead trees. And then there was the hillside. And then there was this big tree that didn't exist that you're supposed to line up on with the north-south access. So all these factors that would indicate that this should be the site, it did not make sense. So I scratched that one off first. And then we went upstream and then it came to the other area, which we call it the Peter Burns site. And I remember being taken there by people and standing next to the bat box and have them point at the big tree, 1 of 2, and say, that's the big tree. And with Ian and when Ian and Steven and I all got together, we basically looked at that, and that was so quick to eliminate because you need a distance from the big tree south, and it's not there. And then the river's in the wrong place. You go, that doesn't make sense. And then you need a bunch of other factors. So Ixnay, that one's gone. Then you keep moving upstream. Then you get to the other location where we call it the Big Gulch, where I remember stopping there with my kids because they didn't want to get wet. And that's when Bobo was walking me up the stream there. And that area's been so washed out and you can't tell anything. And according to Stephen and Ian, when they were showing me the PowerPoint, they showed me this picture of this helicopter. Well, a helicopter landed there, and they still had the blue flagging on the gravel where the helicopter landed, and they marked it.
Right.
And it's like, this is gone. You can't tell anything here. But where's the big trees? and you couldn't line that up very well. So that ended up being we called it the Gulch, but we called it the Christopher Murphy site because it was marked in one of his books. And it was marked in one of his books because he had asked people questions, and that's what they said it was. So that one get X-nate. So now we're down to 2. Right? Next one is the we call it the Daniel Perez site, because in 2003, and this is the big confusion, and it was over at the elementary school in Willow Creek. It was the Bigfoot Symposium in 2003. I know I'm digressing, but this is how we ended up the site. I got to go back to fill in the gaps. So in 2003, I was speaking at the salmon dinner lunch, giving my presentation I gave to the parks. Remember the same one where I eventually got in trouble for that one?
Yeah.
So I'm giving that presentation at the park, and then I got a chance to meet Christopher Murphy at the top of the bleachers right before he had his book published, the first one. I guess it's Meet the Sasquatch, whatever, in 2004. So I got to meet him up topside, and I got to see Bob Gimlin from a distance. I got to talk to John Green, pretty exciting. But that was the 2003 thing, and that was the beginning part of the process. So that's the location where he felt it was based on what he told him. So now we're progressing upstream from there to Daniel Perez. Well, in 2003, Daniel Perez is caught on film saying, "This is the place." Well, that's where we gave him credit for that site. And also, Ian likes to say this. He ran into Daniel Perez in that location looking for the film site. So he has two reasons why it's his site.
Yeah.
And so from there, we moved up farther upstream in the area that was so overgrown next to this long straightaway. And that ended up being, we called it the Cliff Brackman site, but it ends up being the PG site. And we call it the Cliff Brackman site is because he's the one who felt that was definitely probably the area there. So we give him credit for that. But Rene DeHinden gave Daniel Perez a map. And on this map was a blue X. And DeHinden sometimes will not give people all the information because he wanted to keep some things secret. So he had this map, but Daniel didn't quite understand the concept of the map. So he had the answer in front of him the whole time. That's that blue X there. So that's why we call the Gulch area. I'm sorry, we call it, when you get to the film site, we call it DeHinden's X, because there's a blue X on the map that DeHinden gave Daniel Perez. Therefore, that's the DeHinden's X. So we talk about it in the book a lot, DeHinden's X. And so that led us to investigating that location, and we spent a whole year, the next season, gridding it out. North-south access points, 30-foot squares, drawing in all the artifacts that match on foot, because we can't cut the trees down and you can't see, it's too overgrown. So we drew in the area between these little squares, 30-foot squares, on a north, south, east, west access point, and we gridded the whole sandbar. And that's
that takes some time.
But kind of here's, well, got upside down. But that's kind of one of the earlier gridding process that we ended up with.
Right.
Getting the artifacts, we call them, logs, stumps, organic piles. We draw them in place. Once you draw them in place, you have an idea of where they are. So the magic comes when you tunnel through the vegetation and use a compass to north, south, east, west, put flags in the corners, draw on the artifacts, and then you take an aerial shot, much like this. This is DeHinden's overview. He did this in 1971 or 72. I think 71.
Right. That's in the book.
But that's actually in Christopher Murphy's book. So that's the thing. You see all those little red circles?
Yeah.
Those are what we call artifacts, because if you look at this guy, that's the map we drew. Those are the same corresponding artifacts. I just can't do this very well, but so we use that to find the spot, and we were able to do it. We started with the English alphabet. We used every single one of those letters, and then we started using lowercase, and then we said, this is probably it. We even matched things as interestingly as there's a leaning tree. You can't see that very well, but there's a leaning tree in the background here. when
Right.
you look at it closely, that's actually there behind the big tree. There's also this other area that has like a lot of crossed over logs, as you can see right there. Those are still there. They had some fungus growing on one of them, but we found the stumps. And those are all the stumps that are in the frame 352, which is the, oh, here we go. Got to use the classic 352. Everybody's probably familiar with this guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and 352, that's
Photo.
frame 352. And
Right.
that 352 frame, it has Patty walking along, and right in front of her is a stump. We call it the smiley stump because, well, when you blow pictures up, you lose the pixels,
Yeah,
and
you
it gets
do.
kind of blurry. So everybody says the Bigfoot footage was blurry. It's just you blew it all up. And so you have this blurry looking, stump type thing. And that happens to be right in front of Patty. And that is a landmark. And this is an important stop. Because directly above it is the, what we call it the spiky snags, but Bill Munns calls it the pool cue. And so that lined up pretty good there. So there's artifacts that line up that has everything you need just to find them. There's leaning stumps, there's big stumps, and they all line up right. But I'm going to fast forward to so 2010 and 2011, we figured out where the site was. So then we send a picture to Daniel Perez, the one I showed you where we circle everything. We weren't
Yeah.
circling Bigfoots. We're circling the landmarks. And he saw that. And to his credit, he goes, "You guys found it?" I go, yeah, we did. I was probably the last member of our group. The first four was Steven Stroyford, Ian Carton, and Rowdy Kelly. I talked him into it helping when Ian couldn't help anymore. So Rowdy Kelly, he helped us out. He became member number 4. I was member number 3. And Jamie Wayne became member number 5 when we tried to use mathematics and angles based on positions to show that it was a matching area. And he did that for us for a kind of a college project. So fast forward to 2012, Bill Munns. Bill Munns had been working on this project for 5 years. He'd been taking the movie footages, articulating notes, figuring out positions and everything. And he had been posting things along the process. So at that point, we decide in July of 2012, we're going to bring him down and show him the site. So we got him for 2 days down there. So I remember hiking him in real slow, get him there, and we got him all the way over to the film site location. And we don't have all the vegetation cleared. We just have tunnels for sites on certain things. So we get him there, and then we let him go first, right? And we sit back and we watch him. And he's got his boxes of all this stuff he's looking around. And then we walk him right down. We says, "Go that way." And he walks all the way down. And then you see him stopping when the first view of the big tree in the background opens up. And he stops there and he's looking at it. He's looking at his notes. And you watch his face slowly go. And he's already stopped talking to us. We don't exist anymore. He's in the zone. He's looking, and then he fades off to the right, and he's matching stuff off. But we didn't know what he was doing when he faded off to the right, because when he got to the right, he's looking for the Laurel and Hardy tree that he called it. And Laurel and Hardy, it's kind of a slapstick, black and white started, whereas a kind of a chubby guy, bigger, and a skinny, smaller guy, Laurel and Hardy.
Right.
So one of the trees growing together, one of them is larger than the other, and they're really close. And when you're standing in front of the tree, it's hard to see those two separate trees. But when you back up, you see it, and it's in the shot to the far right, the Laurel and Hardy tree. So that was his ace in the hole for it. Well, we didn't need that for ace in the hole because we had all the artifacts on the upper sandbar that we marked, compared, we figured it out. And so that was kind of a cool little experience to be part of that up to 2012 when we brought him down. And about 2012, we decided what wildlife comes on this area here. So we decided to put up a bunch of game cameras. So therefore, the Bluff Creek Game Camera Project began. And then, which is still under the Bluff Creek Project, but, subtitled. And so we set them up and we started putting cameras up. And we started hiding some of them, but the snow would cover them up, and vegetation would be pushed down on them. So we started just leaving them out in the open wherever we did it. Well, lo and behold, our first season, the winter of, I'll say though, the winter of the end part of 2012 to the beginning of 2013, lo and behold, we catch this weasel-like animal across one of the sandbars near what's called the Rocky Plug. And we're like, what is that? Is it a weasel? It looks like a marten. So we find out that it's a Humboldt marten, and they're very rare. And they had shut hunting down in the 40s because they thought they were almost all wiped out. So all of a sudden, you have this animal captured with a game camera, and we have it on movie footage. You get to see it. We have it stills or movie, and you get to see this animal moving across the sandbar. And so therefore, we sent, I should say, Jamie sent over to Humboldt State. What is this? He sent it to everybody else. And then we found out it was Humboldt marten. And we find out they were pretty much a rare animal. So we didn't see a Bigfoot, but we saw a Humboldt marten. So we like to think that our discoveries led to the Forest Service recognizing the need to protect those areas a lot more.
Yeah, of course it would be.
Getting
Yeah.
protected. Yeah. So it's our group has, we like to think our group has contributed to that. But you also like to think, well, when you have an area and you spend a lot of time at it, you get a little protective of it. And you can't be there the whole time protecting things, but you're there.
You can.
Yeah. So we feel almost like guardians of the film site. And it's not our film site. It's everybody's film site, but we get kind of protective of it. So when we remove lower branches and allow the sunlight and visibility sheds to open up, that means the elements are there. That means those old stumps we talked about as artifacts, they start deteriorating. They start getting broken down a little bit, and they'll be gone soon. But at least we know where the site is. We got GPS. We have the maps that we kind of sketched in, and we like to think that next generations would treat the place with respect and dignity that it took so long to relocate, that we won't lose it again. That everybody will know where it is. So that's one of those things we like to think about, and we want to remind other people going in there to travel, take pictures, travel lightly, and try not to trash the place, because it belongs to all of us. And it is great. Like this time of year, it's closed because the Port Orford cedars have this virus that actually attacks them and kills them. So they closed access off in that area for up to 8 months, and until the rain stop. I don't know if you can hear it now. We'll get rains just dumping on us here at home, but the rain stops, and once they stop around June-ish to July, they'll open them back up again. So that area is closed to public access for 8 months. So you imagine how wild and pretty cool that can be.
That would be, yeah. I know somebody's asked a question in here. Hi, Robert. Appearances in Real Scary Stories, was that ever heard?
Well, I don't know. I didn't follow it, and I didn't make it. I was the cutting room floor because I couldn't answer questions. But the other gentleman with the shaved head and the beautiful cast was probably in it. But I don't know what happened to that program. That's my memory of what it was called, Real Scary Stories. And it was back in the, somebody else can look that up. It was back in, I'm thinking now, when I went up there. Yeah. So it's probably 2000 or probably about 2000 or 2001, I would guess, off of memory. But that's what I remember it being called. And I don't know much more than that. It was supposed to be a bunch of kids getting scared, going to different places, and people encouraging them to get scared, I guess.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And you're a ranger. Some of the states in America, you're not allowed to shoot Bigfoot. Is that right?
Well, many years back in southern Washington, Skama County, they had this ordinance, a criminal offense and a fine if you shot Bigfoot. But if you were to go hunting, let's say you're going to go hunting in, I'll use California since that's where I'm at. You can only hunt during the season. You can only do method of take based on what's allowed. And so you can only hunt what's on the list. You can only take with the method allowed to take during the period of time they only allow you to do it. So if you went over it to shoot Bigfoot, then you'd be in violation of is that on the list? There are some animals like coyotes where there are no limits, and they think they're considered a nuisance. They take those like wild pigs in some areas, but it's usually the itemized animals that are on a list, and Bigfoot's not on that list. So technically, you can't be taking anything that's not on the list.
Right, right. Yeah. Tell us about the Bluff Creek project, about your book.
Yeah. Yeah. This guy right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's available on Amazon. It's at $27.95 on Amazon. It's about 2 years, almost 2 years old now. But the idea of the book was that whole adventure. I kind of Reader's Digest through it. It's all pretty much documents the process. We have pictures, photographs, short stories, some of our experiences that we've gone through, just to share them. Yeah, I remember somebody going through and says there's too many pictures in it, but pictures speak louder than words. Yeah, there's over 200 pictures. I'm pretty sure of it because I had to put them in there. But yeah, I wanted something different. I wanted it to be a lot more fun to read than a boring textbook or another book on Bigfoot with all the sightings in it. You want something a little bit different that's not quite like what everybody else has. I think we've accomplished that. Yeah, and the drone shot. This is the color shot of Roddy's drone captured
Right.
the film site. It's pretty much there. It's hard for me to do this, but this is the film site here. This area here. Whoops, there it is in the book. And
Right.
also Roddy worked on the cover as well as my daughter and Roddy's wife worked on it. But if the lighting is just right, you can almost see the misty outline of a Bigfoot on the front cover. When we first submitted it, you could see it really good, but then when the printing process takes place, sometimes that detail disappears. So, but it's a fun read. I enjoyed writing it. There are certain people who probably should read it who still feel the film site is downstream and haven't changed their mind on it. Not to mention any names, but they're one of the 5 I mentioned. But there's still a lot of people who are skeptical about where it is. I encourage them to do some more homework and actually read some stuff on it. And some people, it doesn't matter what you write, they're not going to believe it because they already have their mindset on it, which is a problem.
Yeah, that's true.
But they're entitled to their opinion just like everybody else.
Robert, do you think Bigfoot is interdimensional then?
Now, I don't know how to answer that question because I can't say I've experienced that aspect of it. There are people who talk about it who believe it's that way. They have their reasons for it. I've just about heard everything, but I can't say I've actually seen a Bigfoot. You see a shadow doesn't count. You drive by a shadow on the road that's tucked down and you come back and it's not there. You can't prove it was a Bigfoot. You can say it was a shadow. And like sounds and calls, I've heard a lot of that. I've had just a recent trip. I've had something walk around my tent on 2 legs. And I had to record it too. And it walked around and stopped by my tent, and then it would move and stop again. And then it walked around the other side and stopped. Now I didn't smell anything, and boy, I was listening, but I didn't hear heavy breathing or anything else. But who knows what that was? Like a lot of the tracking surfaces, you can't tell much. Same here. But that location, I've had that happen before. And I was also playing my flute one day. I'm not very good, evidently. So I was playing my flute one day, and when I start at this place near a lake, I like to blow it really loud so it echoes across the water. It's almost like an elk call. Right. It's almost like that's my calling card. Here I am. Come get me. And then I proceeded to play, and I was recording my playing because I like the way it echoes off the water. It's kind of cool. And then I was trying to record, and then I was with Bobo at the time, and I was with Bart Tino. And I kept hearing some yelling and some noise going on. And I'm like, don't those guys know I'm trying to record? And so I go up there to talk to them. And that's when Bobo tells me, he goes, yeah, something just threw a rock and landed right behind me at the back of my pickup truck, hit the road twice and went down the hill. And of course you think, oh yeah, something just rolled off the hill, right? The hill is not very steep. It doesn't do it justice here on the angle. There's your hillside right there. Right. And it takes a lot more to roll stuff down that hill. And that's not the first time weird stuff has happened up there too. So So you've got that. You've got samurai talk. You've got rock tossing. Not the first time I had something thrown at me. And then you have sounds you hear, calls or whatever. And then of course there's the shadows. You see a shadow and it moves, and you don't know what you saw. You saw a moving shadow. And stick structures. You see those. And I'm not a big fan of saying everything's Bigfoot, but I haven't seen a Bigfoot truck put together a tree structure. And if I did, then I could say he did it. But other than that, you have tree structures. Some are very intricate. Some are pretty natural looking. And that's another one of the things you see. And then you have the knocks on trees. You have twisted branches weaved together. I've seen that a few times. And the question always is something with these probably did it, but what's the point? And we don't know who did that, but that's something you'll notice and it catches your attention. Or even markers. Like when I was with Bart, we're in the Sierras in a very active place that has a lot of activity and a lot of stories. And we found a snow mound, which basically is a pile of snow, cone shaped, covered with organic material to protect the snow. And
Oh my God.
it was 4 foot tall, 6 foot diameter.
How
It was
strange was
covered
that?
with, pardon?
Very strange, that is
Oh,
then.
very strange. Yeah, when you see that in the forest, you're like, what's the purpose? Well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you got food, shelter, protection, recreation, art. So you got this list of things. So you run down the list going, what's with this? So when you look at it, you don't know it's snow until you start taking things off of it. Then you realize it's full of snow. And then you bore holes in the snow. You realize it's pure white snow, which means it was constructed while it was dropping. And then you have nothing inside, which tells you what, if it was an ice box, where's the door handle and why isn't there something in there? So when we first put that up in 2005, there's a lot of experts, by the way, you probably know this already. There are so many experts at the subject matter that they can't agree on anything. So you have, why would anything put a pile of snow and cover it up? So we had markers, shelters, refrigerators. Even Matt jumped on it and talked about Giardia for fresh drinking water, which no. And then you have a bunch of other things that come up, and you have to ask those questions as to why would anything do what they do? What purpose does it serve? And to say, I don't know, is probably more accurate than saying it does it for this reason. Well, let's go with this one. This is fun. A lot of people find stick structures. I see them more now than before, but some are really convincing that something used these to build them. Some are look kind of natural.
Right.
So let's say you're a creature that wants to be private and not be noticed. Why would you put a billboard out to let everybody know where you were? And that's something we have to consider. If you're stealth, you're going to be as stealth as you can. If you're going to put a billboard up, and the question on that one was, if you put the billboard up, you'll scare away people. Well, that doesn't seem to work for humans most of the time. Or is it to let other squatches know that's your turf? Or is it a directional where look, I need to go this way. Like you'll see branches bent down and then they change direction. Now they're trees and they do the same thing. And it's a known fact that some of the native groups had put markers out there that way by bending a branch and allow it to grow up, and it'll always be there as long as the tree's there. It can always be a directional for you. Or maybe it's a territorial marker. But that's something that goes up. But I have to ask, the common sense part is, why would you do that if you're concerned about your sanctuary and not being noticed or giving away your location? So there's always a lot of things people talk about, and I don't know. We have so much to learn. You asked me before about, well, not portals, but about the energy areas or people having Bigfoot talk to them in their heads and stuff.
Yeah.
Can't say if I experienced that, so I don't have an answer for that. Or walking along and disappearing through a portal, that's beyond my comprehension. I don't have answers for you for that. I do know that you can, as a human, back up into vegetation and disappear like you're cloaking out like in Predator. There are ways of disappearing and making it look like you disappeared. But I don't have any answers for all those other stories that people come up with. So I don't know if that answered your question or I was able to sidestep every single one of them, but that's a whole different area in itself. And in terms of evidence.
So do you think, Robert, that the government have got a live Bigfoot?
Say that one more time.
Do you think the government have got a living Bigfoot?
I hear stories, but I have no facts to back any of that up. Yeah, I guess you could call it conspiracy, whatever, but I have no idea. I have no answer for that one. I can tell you, working for the government, they didn't like talking about those kind of things. So but my job was just providing interpretation. And my experience with that was, let's not say that you believe in Bigfoot while you're an employee of this agency, because then if you believe in Bigfoot, then you're speaking on behalf of the agency, then everybody else is going to assume the agency believes in Bigfoot. The good old transitive method. But I don't know about those other things. I don't have an answer for you. I don't have friends in the government that know everything about all that stuff. So
Another one thing, what everybody wants to ask, why can't we ever find any bones of a Bigfoot?
That comes up a lot when I start thinking about how often do you find skeletals in the woods. If you find more bones near roadkills on the edge of the road for different animals than you do out in the middle of nowhere. The calcium deposits on bones alone are a great source of food for everything else. Like if we can go back to the kill site in Sierras where we went back to investigate whether it happened or not, we didn't find any remains of bones in an area where allegedly this whole thing went down and things were supposed to be buried. But I do know that things don't last long. Like antlers off of ungulates, they get eaten up by animals. I do find them occasionally. But you think about it, a deer has a male deer, a buck has two of them. So your chances of finding that is 50. It's just gone up 100%. Now it's 50%, the finding those things. But I found some bones out in the woods before. I found hair piles. I don't know how long it's been there, but it's in the process of decaying and being eaten. And bones tend to get scattered because things run off with them. So that's another factor to consider too. I do know, even working in my yard, I put gravel down. It takes a couple seasons for the gravel to sink back into the mud and everything. So even those things disappear. Things get, starts disappearing into the soil based on percent moisture or impact or just the rodents pushing the soil up around it. So so who knows on that one? I do know that you can go a long time without finding that. Just on the same subject, but just kind of the same idea is our game cameras, like around the film site, we see just about as many mountain lions as we do bears. And there are more bears than the mountain lion. And the mountain lion are more secretive, but yet in a specific location, it's part of their travel area. We get to see them a lot more. So that could also be a factor too. If there's a game trail or travel that's way off the beaten path, we're probably not going to see it that often. Just more food for thought.
Yeah. What you before we go anyway, what you got planned for the future?
Well, a lot of things, but the immediate thing is this: I wrote a Bigfoot trilogy 25 years ago. And so when I first got involved with it, I was getting into writing, and I wrote Bigfoot Mystery, Yeti or Not, Here We Come, and Operation Redwood Quest. So I decided for the silver anniversary of that is to rewrite them all, fix the grammar problems, sentence structure. I did artwork for one of them. My daughter's pretty good. I was trying to get her into doing more art for the other books. The Bigfoot Mystery one, I'm almost done re-editing it for the 25th. Probably by next month, that'll be back out. And we also have I was working with Bart Catino on another storyline, basically all the investigations we did together. And I did a lot of work on that. I gave it to Bart. Bart's working on it. So that's in the future. And of course, I got a bunch of other writing projects too. But in terms of Bigfoot related stuff, is rewriting some of the stuff, get it back out there. I don't do as much videography anymore as I used to, but I do the podcasts. We kind of cut back on that too. We had, I want to say we had like 80 episodes. Usually working with Tate Hieronymus and Kip Morrill. We've done interviews. Rowdy's helped out with that. I like to do in the field stuff. So I'll interview people in the field, ask them some questions. and then I'll edit it out, and then we'll put it up. But I'm kind of behind on those, and my partner's behind on it. So I have a few waiting to go up. I didn't do a lot of interviews this year. I could have, but I didn't want to bore too many people. So I kind of cut back. Remember when they first gave me a camera, I was out of control. Well, the same thing with recorder. I did the same thing for a while. Then after a while, you kind of go drift from doing this a lot to doing this. And, as we get older, our interests change. And I still want to stay busy with things Bigfoot related, but yes. I do other things too. Like, teach family, little ranch I have to deal with. So I'm always busy with something, but I do like providing information, and writing is one of those fun things I like to do. I'm better now than I was when I started. When you start something, you think you're good at it, and then you realize you're not. But then you have so much time committed in it, you feel like if I keep committing more and more time, maybe I'll get better at it. So persistence does pay off.
It does, yeah. Well, thank you for coming on the show. It's been
Sure.
Very interesting subject, as usual. Robert just said in the chat room, thank you very much for your time, Robert, in the chat room. So everybody enjoyed it, as usual. Very interesting subject is Bigfoot. And I love hearing stories about it as well. And, you carry on what you're doing best. You love that work. You love getting out there. And I'm sure carry on your writing.
Yes. Hey, could I share one last thing with your viewers?
Yeah, you can do, yeah.
Here we go. This is the soil samples of the film site. It's kind of hard from saying, what if I turn it like this? No, that doesn't help.
No,
there you go.
Just put it up there. Yeah, that's no.
So that's how fine grained the soil is up there. So when they found impressions in the soil, they're there for a while. So we had to silt this out by collecting it and using screens to get the fine sand.
Get it fine.
Yeah, and the story is that after the Patterson film was shot on October 20th, 1967, they did some castings of some of the prints there. So I think Laverty has some casts and some other people that cast. So they didn't get back into the area until June, and it was John Green did back in June. And they filmed some footage, and they also talked about the tracks. They said they were still there. So we did an experiment with Stephen and I. It's in the book where we did the same thing. Is we left footprints there that we created by digging out little size, 1 at 2 inches, 1 at 4. We marked them, and we came back in June, and we saw that the impressions were still there, but they were filled with leaves and kind of messed up. But it's in the book. So we talk about it is possible for somebody to go back there and see impressions in that sandbar because of the type of soil that's there. Anyhow, I just thought I'd throw that out there for you.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, I like that. Rebecca Kingsley said, brilliant, thank you.
You're welcome.
She's loved it as well in the chat room. My guest next Wednesday is Simon Ein. I don't know if you know him or not. I think he's done lots of different things around the world as well. He's on next Wednesday. Let's have a look. That'll be the 6th of November at 7 o'clock UK time. And we'll be back to normal next week because you put your clocks back next week as well, don't you?
Yeah, actually, this Sunday. We're supposed to lose it. No. Yeah, we lose an hour. It was basically
we lose an hour. Well, thank you, Robert, for coming on the show. It's been very interesting subject.
Well,
you take care. And we'll get you back on again next year sometime.
Perfect. By then, we should have our audiobooks we're going to work on. The books I wrote, I'm turning them into audiobooks.
Oh, brilliant.
And I get my buddies at the program, Bluff Creek Project guys, to play the voice actors. Should be fun. Yeah,
that'd be great. You'll have to let me know when you're going to put them out.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you. And I should say good night from the UK.
All right, good night.
And enjoy rest of your day.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody in the chat room. Bye for now.